exciting. This is our last event of the winter.
Aww.
I know, very tragic. Well, we know people have things that they got going on, like gardening and not huddling inside when the sun's out like we've been doing for 4 months. But I want to thank you all for being here. I see some new faces. Raise your hand if you've never been to a Tipsy Talk before. Wow, this is fantastic. So, and for those who haven't been here, this is a series that we do in the winter between like New Year's and the end of March. And we just try to get people out of their house in the middle of the week. In the deep, dark winter, come on down to a local venue, support a local business, have a pint, have a couple slices of pie, and listen to stories and passion projects and travels and other tidbits from friends and neighbors and strangers in the kingdom. And tonight we have two stellar speakers. We have Dana Allen from Waterbury, and we have Jeremiah Melhuish. Close enough. From the grand old land of Derby, Vermont. And not only are they both charming gentlemen, I've known both of them to entertain a mustache on occasion. And they could pass for brothers. And so I like to think that I have this kind of wizardry skill of pairing strangers together to tell a tipsy talk in succession. And for the most part, it goes pretty well. I'm hoping these guys can finish the year strong and not get into like some sort of feud on the stage. So first we're going to hear from Dana. This is about what you measure matters. Yes. We're going to have some data-driven insight and cool, fancy tools and technology that people use. And it's a treat to bring Dana into our kingdom so that he can spread his knowledge amongst our little hives and hamlets. So welcome Dana up, and let's get started.
So, hi, Dana Allen. I live in Waterbury. I run a company called Fluid State Consulting. I work with Patrick every once in a while. We do nerdy stuff with water together. So we're going to be talking about measuring stuff and why you have to do that and why that matters. And I'm going to talk to you a lot about drones. We're going to get into some semi-technical stuff. These lights are unbelievable. I didn't practice anything, so if this seems disjointed or if you have questions, just jump in. But here's an example of why what you measure can really matter. And the punchline to this story is it's very uncomfortable to push a bike in a shopping cart. When I was 22 years old, I was leading bike tours in Europe, and I thought that I was really awesome. I could fix bikes, I could lead kids around. I was really cool. I also wore spandex every day. So one day I had to fix my brakes, and I was in a hurry, and so I didn't measure where I placed the brakes on the rim of my bicycle. I thought, that's fine, they'll be good. We don't have to worry about this. We went up and over the Alps. It was a rainy day, there was a lot of dirt on the road. I thought everything was fine. There's a lot of weird noises coming from the rear wheel, but I thought, we're good. We get onto the other side after 2 hours of descending, a lot of brake dragging, etc. We're working our way into the outskirts of Florence. We pull up to a stop sign. One of my children decides to come up short on a curb, falls over, doesn't unclip, breaks his arm. So that was my first encounter with an Italian ambulance. Don't encounter it. His description of them setting the arm was terrifying. So anyway, I now have 11 children and no co-leader and bicycles going into Florence, and I'm like, all right, great. Bike is sounding like absolute trash. Can I swear? Is that okay?
Please.
I'm gonna swear. Okay. Anyway, so the bike is sounding like absolute shit, and we're getting closer and closer to Florence. There's more and more noises, but I'm like, listen, we got a day off tomorrow. Let's forget this. It'll be fine. Everything's fine. Soon enough, as we get into the river area, the noises get louder, and eventually I hear what sounds like a gunshot, and my bike grinds to a stop immediately. Turns out I hadn't really lined up the brakes correctly on the rim. They'd worn a hole in the rim because of differential pressure, because I'm a dumbass. and it exploded a metal rim. Shards of metal were on the ground. And so now I've got 11 children, one in the hospital and a co-leader who's absentee, I've got a cell phone, and I really just want to get to a hostel so I can put these kids in their rooms and cry. And that involved us talking with nice Italian men about how the taxis were all on strike. So there's no taxi for us. It's like, great, that's super. Love you. Italy, you're the best. And then I was like, all right, guys, this is what's happening. I'm going to give my bike trailer, because of course we were, towing 40 pounds of gear. Gave my bike trailer to a kid. I grabbed my bike and started running in bike shoes and spandex and a sleeveless shirt. So like, there's a vision for you. And eventually found a shopping cart. And so I pushed my bicycle in a shopping cart for 2 miles. Why does any of this matter? Because I forgot to measure something important. So basically that transitions into this talk, which is about drones. Anyway, that was an intro. So what do I do? Okay. You're gonna have to bear with this first part of the presentation because I made this for a client, so there's some client pandering in here. Basically things that they think are important, but that like you probably won't think are as important. So we're gonna talk a little bit about leveraging aerial mapping. And basically, why are we using drones to capture data? Well, okay, here's the deal. We've got 3 images here. One is a stock image from Google, one is a stock image from the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, and one is an image that I created from bespoke drone data, right? So you can see on this Google image, that's really blurry. I don't know when that was taken. That could have been 2017, that could have been 2020, no idea. Same thing with this VCGI image, Vermont Center for Geographic Information, for any of you nerds out there. Really fun website to play with, right? I don't know when that was taken, probably, 2019, something like that. But this with the drone, I know exactly when that was taken. I have a better resolution. This is about 6 inches per pixel, right? Do we all know what pixels are?
Yep.
Little squares make up pictures. All right, cool, nerds. 6 inches per pixel. Mine's about ½ an inch per pixel. So if you want to see detail, if you want to measure something, you want to see the condition, this is better, right? So we have the technology to do stuff like this. It's actually pretty easy to do. So we need to be leveraging these tools because we can measure more things more reliably by doing this, right? Not just relying on stock data. So here's another example of this. I love this one. Actually, Patrick, you were working on this project that day. This is a hydroelectric dam in Highgate. And so what we're looking at right now is stock imagery of that, right? Like, a couple things come to mind here. When these dams get relicensed, they have to go through a lot of relicensing processes, right? Like, they have to go through a aquatic organism passage process. Basically, can fish swim here, right? And what goes into that? They need to know that when the dam is operating at certain flow levels, right? CFS, cubic feet per second. They need to know what are the flow rates in that tail raised channel. So in this channel down below the dam, how fast is that water going? And there's a bunch of different ways you can get at that, but one of the ways you can do that is using a wetted perimeter. Wetted perimeter also tells you how much habitat is potentially available for any of those aquatic organisms below that dam. So, if I'm kind of a typical environmental consultant, civil engineer, I could use some of this stock imagery and maybe try to match up that stock imagery date with records from the dam on that flow date and say, okay, on this day it was flowing at X CFS. This is my wetted perimeter, so I can look at the edges here. So this is your perimeter, that's where all the water is. But again, 6 inches per pixel, this sucks. Like, that's not good enough. Also, we don't exactly know what date it is, and finding the records for flow on that day could be difficult. So if you're wicked smart, like me and Patrick, and Becky, who is our collaborator on this, you fly a drone and you get the dam operators to operate at exactly what you want. So you tell them, I want you to flow this at 35 CFS for the next 45 minutes to an hour. We'll let it stabilize, and then we'll fly the drone and we can figure out exactly where our wetted perimeter is, right? We can see where that water is. So let's just compare these two things real quick. So 6" per pixel, unknown date. You know, we can zoom in here. I can't even really tell where like rocks start and water begins. But then if we go over here, we know exactly where that is, right? So we can actually create some really high quality data from this very quickly and very easily. And so then that allows us to go back to the regulators and say, listen, at this CFS from this dam, we know that this is the wetted perimeter. How do we know? Well, we flew. We have this data, right? We have proof. If we have a channel cross section, right, we can then take that cross section, look at this wetted perimeter, and start to develop even more accurate flow modeling. So in this case, like, we have a better way of measuring something, and that actually matters because these are vital infrastructure. Like, this is a small community hydroelectric dam. Like, they're regulated the same way as a large utility scale hydroelectric dam. They do not have the resources that those larger facilities do, so they kind of eke by, right? And this is the sort of thing where, like, here we are in Vermont, we're trying to do our own internal domestic, like, renewable power. So finding efficient solutions for people like this is really important. So that's just one example of, like, why this stuff actually matters. It's not super abstract. It's very, like, I don't know, it's very concrete. This is another example I'm gonna show you real quick. So this is an example of a dam removal project. Anyone in the room know how many dams there are in Vermont that we know about? You should know them.
Yes.
Yeah, what's your guess?
Know of or operating?
How many mapped dams are there on the A&R Atlas?
Probably 800.
All right, we're playing Price is Right rules. Anyone got a guess?
Yeah.
801.
Close to the worst. 802 would be a great guess. It's not correct. It's about 1100 dams all the time. So I think, you know, whatever. You guys did great.
Same order of magnitude, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We're you know, you're not at 10,000. So anyway, these dams are all across the state, and like we just looked at, like, right, like that's a vital hydroelectric project dam. That's really good. A lot of these dams are remnant dams, and they don't really matter. All they do is block aquatic organism passes, so fish can't swim past them. It messes up nutrient cycling in the rivers. It cuts the river off from its floodplain, so it actually reduces flood storage. So, like, a lot of these dams have an impact on flood resilience, right? And I don't know if that's important to anyone, but it's super important to me because I'm super tired of mucking out my friends' basements. Frankly, they need to get their shit out of their basements. Not coming over anymore. That's how that shakes out. I'll go to their houses. I'm not a monster.
Tell us how you really feel.
Well, we can get into that. Just let me finish this beer. So this is a project that we actually, this is one of my first drone mapping projects for dam removals, where we got there just a little bit after the dam was, or the site was cleared. And so we're actually able to get like a sort of like mid-construction look at it. And the reason that this is important is, one, we can track this progress, and we'll kind of see that in the next like swipey slide thing. Obviously I didn't make a slideshow because I'm super lazy. I made these websites instead. So yeah, we can track this over time. I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? We also can show people what they look like. People are very nervous about these dam removal projects at times because they're used to the wetland, the pond, the whatever it is, right? And they think that dam removal is going to really ruin whatever landscape they've become accustomed to. And so showing people what these look like after they've been removed and restored is actually super important. So not only can we track these things for project partners, where you can see like, hey, you took out the dam, this is what the channel looked like before, and we'll look at that in a second here. I'll kind of zoom out so you can see it. Right there, you can see the excavator actually pulling the dam apart. But yeah, we can track things like channel migration for our project partners. We can track riparian vegetation restoration. So they can actually prove, okay, we said we'd restore X number of acres of riparian buffer, we did that, right? We said we'd reconnect X number of square feet or acres of floodplain, which has an impact on phosphorus cycling, right, for Lake Champlain. So we don't want to swim in harmful algal blooms. phosphorus cycling and sequestration is super important, right? So again, like we're able to measure this stuff. So this is pre-construct or mid-construction. You can see there's the channel right there, right? That's kind of where they just pinned the channel so they could work in there with the excavators. And so then when we came back a year and a half later, we can see actually that even just a year and a half later, so basically going from construction site, bare soil, there's a bulldozer in there. A year later, we've already got woody debris accumulating in the stream. We've got a stabilizing channel. We can see it sort of like moving, broadening. That's something that we didn't see before in this site. It wasn't a very broad channel, it was a wetland. We can see that there's some floodplain reconnection, and more importantly, there's a lot of vegetation growing back up, right? So like, if you're looking to show someone what you've done, this is a really quick and easy way to do it. And we can also take like just regular oblique photos, like drone photos, and show the same thing if maps are a little abstract, which we've got some examples of later.
Dana, have you ever been attacked by a bird?
What's that?
Has your drone ever been attacked by a bird?
Yes, it has.
What bird?
100% seagull in St. Albans. No, it was in Newport.
That's embarrassing.
Okay, actually,
That's a landfill seagull.
no, it probably was. That's a country seagull. Don't disparage Newport like that. Sorry, you can see that my backup program is not working. You can look at this picture where I'll tell you why I got attacked by a bird. We were doing a project where we were using liquid smoke, so theater smoke, to actually inject it into the stormwater sewer to see if it crossed over into the sanitary sewer in Newport to figure out if there were leaks from the sanitary sewer into the storm sewer. Because if there are leaks from sanitary to storm sewer, then it's going right out in the lake, and that's bad. We are also trying to figure out if there were roof drains, so like flat roofs have drains, trying to figure out if the roof drains were connected to the storm or the sanitary sewer, because then what that means is that when it rains and goes into those drains, your sanitary sewer system, your wastewater treatment plant is treating rainwater, which is dumb and inefficient. So we were flying around with the drone looking for smoke coming out of roofs. And long story short, did get attacked by a bird, found a whole bunch of roof drains connected. So that was a lot of fun. Also would have been a bummer to lose that drone. Anyway, we can take pictures. I took some pictures for a client. This is client pandering. I use this whole website to try and sell services to a client.
Is that client here tonight?
Client is not here tonight. But if anyone works for SE Group in Burlington, the landscape architecture company, tell them to call me. All right, so yeah, client pandering. We can take pretty pictures. All right, this is what I love. So again, we've talked about this imagery. So we're not going to delve too deeply into this because you guys have seen this. Like, drones are obviously good at capturing imagery. I think the thing about this to keep in mind, right, is like there's a process to this. We're actually talking about this in datums. We talked about datums. There's a process to this whereby essentially we can take hundreds, if not thousands, of photos with a drone, mesh them together, geo-reference them using GPS information, and then we can actually flatten them onto the surface of the Earth. So we've got something we can measure. So these aren't just pictures. This is actually like a map. So this is like a measurable thing. So that's one of the pieces of data you can generate with these things, which I think is really cool. And again, like you can get up to date, you can get it super high res. This is actually a pretty decent resolution stock photo that we're toggling back and forth, but clearly the drone is better. All right, this is what I really like. People know what contours is, topographic contours, right? These little lines there. So what we're looking at here is what's called a hillshade, so that's that gray thing underneath that looks like shaded relief. And then we have contours on top of it. So what I think is really cool about this is that there are a couple ways to generate this type of data, topography data. Topography data is super important when you're doing site planning projects, when you're trying to understand drainage patterns, when you want to understand cut fill, when you want to understand stream channel migration, all kinds of things, right? A couple ways to get at this, but what we can do with this photogrammetry, right? I fly a drone that takes pictures from a camera. right? We can actually generate these surfaces from a camera. And so what you see here, that's the raw unedited. So we can see the building, we can see all those cars, we can even see some like garbage over here. I'm not really sure what this is. I think it's like little trees or something. Who knows? And if we zoom way out, you can see we've got a lot of data, right? This is just what the drone sees. What you see is what you get. The first return is that surface, right? But that's not particularly useful for an engineer or someone like me who's doing like stormwater management work where I want to understand drainage patterns and not have it be impeded by some of this stuff on the surface. So what we can actually do, wait, who's asking me about Krieging? Okay, this isn't Krieging, but like they're cousins. They're kissing cousins. All right, this is called interpolation, where basically, notice how we had all this garbage over here, cars and buildings and trees and stuff like that. We basically stripped that all off, right? So we created a point cloud, and then we created this surface, this 3D surface, right? And then I told the computer program, all right, all this stuff, this is garbage, this is ground, this is not. So we slice it all off. And so what it does, the computer does a lot of math, where it takes all these ground points and it averages them, and it slices everything off that's above the ground, and then we get a flat surface, or like whatever the surface is underneath, right? So that's a really quick and easy way to do something. So Patrick, this is like 15 acres.
Okay.
How long would that be for a terrestrial survey?
Is that like parking lot stuff?
Parking
I want to see that?
Yeah, parking
That's
lots,
probably-
grass roads.
That's 2 full days.
2 full days.
Yeah.
Okay. Sick.
And like you do it in 45 minutes.
That was a 30-minute drone flight.
You're taking my jobs!
I didn't get inverts and rims and stuff like that. So like, okay, we're just getting some data. Although we probably could pull rims. So yeah, this was a half-hour flight. This was probably an hour set up for ground control points because we have to. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I think that's nerdy stuff too. How am I doing on time? Am I
You're
just
fine.
shooting my mouth
Yeah,
off?
you're fine.
All right, great. Yeah, and then probably 2+ hours of data digestion in QC to get it down to this clean surface that you see there. So in like a half a day with a decent process, and if nothing breaks, which almost never happens, you can get this done very quickly. Plus, not to knock the work you're doing, terrestrial surveyor, troglodyte, but you get imagery too. So you get all this drone imagery that you can like, it's all fresh, it's super sharp, plus you get your contours, you get all these derived surfaces. So there's really a lot you can do with this.
This is like comparing the Marines to the chair force. I'm kidding.
All right, I'm not going to talk about this yet. That's boring. We don't want to know about that. Okay, what about accuracy? Okay. What about accuracy? Let's see. What's the difference between accuracy and precision? Anyone want to guess? I just need a drink of beer, so that's why I asked you the question.
Hit a target versus hit a point on target.
Well, you could be precisely wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's actually a very, wait, who said that? That's a very good way of putting it. I'm going to steal that from you in perpetuity. You can be precisely wrong. That's exactly it. Like, you can hit the wrong target dead on, and that's very precise. What you want to do is hit the right target correctly. And so that's a thing that happens in drone mapping and really any sort of survey, right? And I can make these like ortho images and I can do these topo surfaces, and they can be very, very accurate in relative space, right? Which means they're accurate to themselves. So they don't necessarily fit correctly in the world. The topography contours that I generate don't necessarily correspond to an agreed upon elevation. And so like that's really cool and all, but it's also kind of garbage if I want to integrate other data. And so what I have to do is actually be accurate and precise. So I have to tie my data to some known datum, right? See, we didn't talk about this. And the way I do that is with a GPS unit, and not just a regular GPS unit, which is like, you know, your phone has a GPS, and these are great. They're actually quite amazing. But the best accuracy that they can get is like 3 meters, like 10, maybe 15 feet, right? That's garbage for what we're trying to do. Like sometimes that's enough, but usually it's not. So what we have to do is we have to use what's called real-time kinematic or post-process kinematic GPS. So what that means is this. These things just pick up the signal from the sky and the cell towers, and they're like, all right, you're about here. What our GPSs do, the RTK GPSs, is that they pick up that satellite signal, but then they also ping known base stations on the face of the Earth. These base stations have been established over time. They're super fixed. They're like buildings or like towers that are super known. There's a lot of complex math that gets applied between those base stations and the satellites, right? So those are very precise locations. So then if you have a bunch of those near your GPS, you can say, okay, the GPS was 11 point whatever kilometers from this base station, and 7 point something kilometers from this other one. So then it triangulates, plus it has the satellite signals. So now you've got corrections. Now you know within a couple of centimeters how accurate you were. So that's what this is showing you, is that basically we've got satellites, we've got this base station, and then we've got the drone kind of roving around out there. What's not shown, which is kind of dumb, I don't know why I use this graphic, is that this base station ideally is also communicating with other base stations that are known on the face of the Earth, right? So that base has additional corrections coming in. So that's how you get that accuracy. Otherwise, we're just precise for no reason.
How far is that radius of base communication?
It's radio communication, so it can be kilometers. So I think like 3 kilometers is what the unit that I have like says it can communicate up to, right? So like if I'm getting communication to that, then it can transmit up to like 3 to 4 kilometers, and that's fairly accurate. Here's the rub, right? The farther away you get, the less the math works, because you just get more rounding errors, right? So like that's the issue with GPS, and like I've had this discussion with some people recently where they're like, well, so-and-so said they could get sub-centimeter accuracy using their GPS. And I was like, that person is lying to you, and you should not buy that, because I don't believe it. So it's a question of math. I mean, we're talking about satellites rotating a lumpy spheroid, and then it's like, and then on this lumpy spheroid are these other base stations, which could be 5, 10, 15 miles away from where you're working. So like the rounding errors compound. So sub-centimeters BS, I think. Some people say they can do it. I don't know if it's actually realistic. Unless you're using a total station, like certain terrestrial surveying programs. Did you know you're gonna get like trolled?
Roasted, yeah.
Okay, what's a GCP, ground control point? So we just talked about like accuracy. We set out these ground control points. Basically, think about it this way, right? Like what we're trying to do is we're trying to take all these photos from the sky, like a bunch of photos that we're like mosaicing together. We're meshing them together. Think of that like a blanket, right? And we're then gonna like drop this blanket from a height, and it's gonna drape over the surface of the Earth, this 3D surface. And you need to figure out like where your pins are, right? Because those pins are what pin it to the surface, and then you interpolate between those points. So basically, using all this position information, you wanna know where those pins are and how accurate the position of those pins that are pinning this blanket to the surface of the Earth. That's really where your accuracy comes from. So we basically put out these GCPs, we survey them, and then we feed them into the computer and we say, these are very accurate. Use these when interpolating the position of the imagery and also of the topography surface. So there's that. God, we're really getting nerdy. This I like as an image to illustrate what's going on. So picture this apex of the point as the drone, and then all of those little rays. That's essentially the position of the drone and the photo. So when we're talking about being able to create these topography surfaces, what we're talking about is comparing all of these photos and their relative positions. So the height of the drone, the angle of the drone, basically the XYZ position, right? Like horizontal and vertical position of the drone, and the angle at which the photo was taken. And then we can say, okay, we know that the drone was X number of units of distance away from the ground at this exact point, and then compare all of those. How does that math work? No idea. I did really poorly at calculus. And I'm pretty sure this is trigonometry. So like, you know. Okay. How does the sausage get made? This is something that I want. If you walk away from this evening with nothing else, I want you to understand the difference between photogrammetry and LiDAR. Who's heard the term LiDAR before? Anyone? Oh my God, that's amazing. Who's heard the term photogrammetry? All right, not just tonight? Okay, great. So, all right, this is amazing. I feel like I've never had an audience that's like this knowledgeable.
Wicked smart.
I should have done this whole thing in the main accent. That's the addendum. All right, here's the difference. Photos, photogrammetry, right? We're just taking pictures, we have a camera. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, or lasers. So when you hear LiDAR, think sharks with frickin' lasers on their heads. That's all I want you to know. If someone says, we're gonna capture LiDAR imagery, ask them what they mean. Because there's not really imagery associated, it's a surface. It's an elevation surface. LiDAR bounces lasers from a sensor to the surface that it's hitting and back. Why is LiDAR cool? Because LiDAR can get through vegetation. Vegetation has gaps in it. Think about a tree canopy. We've got all kinds of holes in there. Lasers can get through that. Cameras, not so good at getting through that. You're relying on visible light. It's not a sensor in the same way. So you have this like, all of these little gaps between the canopy. That laser bounces through there. It can hit the canopy. It can also hit the substory, and they can hit the ground. That's how you get ground surface information from LiDAR, right? So when you hear about like people flying LiDAR in like South America to figure out like where all these structures are, right? Like that's the most famous use case, I think. They flew a plane with a laser that bounced through that canopy and then bounced back to the plane, and then using that bounce like return time, they were able to figure out what was ground, what was canopy, strip away the canopy, get the ground. Photogrammetry can't do that. We can remove like a few trees or a building or like discrete objects, but if it's just canopy and then ground underneath, we're hosed. Not gonna happen. So that's why you have to spend more money for LiDAR drones. They can also fly with cameras on them, get imagery, do photogrammetry as well, but that's the big difference. Lasers. Sharks, lasers on their heads. No one ever understands this. Use the right tool for the job. All right, check this out. I'm gonna go through this quick because I'm probably like running up on time.
Yeah, you got 3 minutes.
3 minutes? All right, well.
You want 2? Act up.
This is great. Okay. So check it out. Right tool for the job. This is why you have to know how to measure something for it to matter, right? Over there, see what looks like tree canopy on that black and white surface, that gray surface? That's because it's tree canopy. That was what I flew and got as a surface, right? Like that's my topography surface. But I don't care about that. I don't want to know about the tree canopy. I want to know what's underneath that. What this was is basically they removed the dam and they wanted to install a whole bunch of like little woody debris things in the stream to see if they could get that incised channel, that eroded channel, to a grade over time. So we had to get a base condition. So I'm not going to be able to do that with a photogrammetry drone. I need to fly LiDAR. So we flew LiDAR. We got this really awesome channel through here. This is tiny. That's like 18 inches across and maybe 2 feet deep max, right? And that's under trees that are 40, 50 feet tall, and a lot of them. Like, you can kind of almost see the channel here, but like, this is useful because now we have a base condition to compare to see if our restoration project actually worked. Okay, we took some pretty pictures. I'm not gonna say this. Dam removal mapping is really badass. Again, it's gonna take a second. Yeah, we've got some like cool droney things. All right, also just notice how awesome these websites are. These are kind of a new thing called story maps. Not that new, but new-ish. This is a great way to present this type of data. So how you present data also matters, and that's the subject of my next talk, which won't be happening tonight. So yeah, this is just another example of like You know what? Sometimes you can do all this nerdy data stuff and no one actually like really cares except for like the practitioners who are like, this is the way we're gonna use it. So capturing stuff like this and integrating it with your project is actually really important. Like just a picture can actually tell 1,000 words. So, I think that's it. Do I answer questions?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Hi,
Yes.
I'm Ann. I work here, and I'm a select board member in the town of Glover. If anybody lives in Glover, you might know that our dam is breaking. I spend, and we're working on that. I spend a lot. We're also developing, floodplain and riparian zoning solutions, all of that stuff. I spend a lot of time looking at, I think it's an A&R website, ANRDC.
A&R Atlas, yeah.
And I hear all the time, it's got so much data on it, you can see so many things, and it's so outdated. And I know that a lot of like what you're doing here, which is far and away better, is under the purview of like private engineering firms for specific projects. What if anything do you see the possibility of getting that data out to governments, municipalities, on those maps that municipalities are looking at, like I am on select board, so that what we're working with is using these better methods that we know we have?
Good question. We're working on this, so one of the initiatives I'm working on right now is like in Waterbury, doing a lot of flood resilience funding and like work like this, and so we're trying to like develop our own resources. It's been, honestly, it's a little hodgepodge. You know, A&R Atlas is actually like, the platform itself is actually quite good for serving up a lot of data. The problem with it is that it's a practitioner's platform, right? So like if you're kind of like not familiar with it, it's overwhelming, it's really hard to find stuff. And right, to your point, like some of the imagery is outdated, some of the information on there is somewhat outdated as well. So that's why I like these like story map platforms, these web map platforms. They're actually quite easy to put together if you have someone who's like, again, like a practitioner who knows how to do it. But like the technological barrier is not what it once was. And so we are able to put this stuff together. One thing, so I was telling Patrick earlier, UVM Spatial Analysis Lab put out all of the drone flooding imagery that they flew earlier this summer, 24 and 23. And so like this is the Waterbury stuff, and I think this is really cool in that like, you know, they just put this out there for everyone to see. And so this is, that's 7/10/23 in Waterbury, so like right downtown Waterbury. So like this stuff is starting to get integrated and available. So that sort of thing I'm really encouraged by. We also do have like statewide LiDAR data now, QL1, right? Like really high quality stuff, and it's pretty much statewide. So again, like we actually have like, when I work in other states that don't have this stuff, it's really tough because you're like, wait, where's your data repository? So like Vermont is doing okay, but to your point, it is hard to find if you're not sort of a nerd, where you like know where this stuff is.
Well, I noticed like the maps that we'll be looking at sometimes, my house is on the Barton River, right on Route 16.
Mm-hmm.
The maps we're looking at, I know for a fact, because I live there, are now outdated because of the last few years of flooding.
Oh, like you mean like channel change, like landform change?
So, and the 2023 LiDAR was just recently available, so like that won't reflect last summer's flood or the previous summer's flood, but it will be, it's 10 years newer than the last stuff, and our county is due for new FEMA flood maps like any day.
Right, I keep hearing that.
Yeah.
And
Keep hearing it. You're gonna keep hearing it.
But I think this has a lot of
But they're working on
potential
it.
to really help a lot of communities, especially in Vermont, that like badly need this data to do things about what's happening because it keeps happening. So great, and thank you. And that was wonderful.
I just want to throw one more thing out, which is the Municipal Vulnerability Index, which I'm curious what you think about.
Oh,
So it's this like tool that the state tried to debut to help municipalities, and
Yeah.
it integrated a lot of their GIS data, but overlaid like where the basically like the critical structure of your town is, like your hospitals, your fire department, your schools, and trying to like layer. But going back to this like flood data, which is what our the NEK is so.
I don't think I'm familiar with this tool
Yeah.
actually, and I need to be because like we're doing a town
I
plan.
want to email all y'all. 'Cause, yeah, it's like, what do you guys think about this? What's missing? Because yeah, it's supposed to be helpful, but then that same time of like, okay, all of those like layers, what do you turn on and off? So anyways, we'll chat. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
This is a totally different direction of a
No,
question. So you work in different states too doing this stuff?
Sometimes. I
Okay.
mostly fly in Vermont. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess my question is around like drone rules, and if you've ever encountered a situation in which you've had to like, you know, pay attention to rules or like weird shit in the sky or like anything
Literally
weird.
every time we fly.
Okay.
Yeah, but good question. So the way that drone rules work is that you have most airspace is public, right? So it's like a road right of way or a public park. So like once you're in the air, typically that's public airspace, right? Which a lot of people don't think that airspace is public above their residence. It actually is, and that leads to some conflicts at times. But technically, public. Restrictions apply around like airports. There's geofencing around like certain critical facilities. Like if you fly over like the Waterbury State Complex, like that's a geofence location. You're not allowed to fly over that technically. Government facilities, stuff like that. And then you can only fly up to 400 feet above ground level. So basically it's defined as like wherever you take off to 400 feet. So if you're smart, you take off on a hill so you can fly higher. Or if you're messing around with towers, you can go 300 vertical feet above the top of the tower.
Wow.
So like it's a little bit
Serious.
fluid as far as like some of those things, but absolutely. And there are definitely times when you can't fly in certain locations. Like I work in Burlington from time to time. The airport there, it's like you're not allowed to fly in certain locations unless you get prior authorization. Sometimes it's super easy, and sometimes you have to call the tower and literally like talk to the tower and be like, "Can I fly my drone over here, guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, I guess, but like don't crash a plane, please." So hospitals are another one. I've had helicopters fly over mapping sites like during the middle of a mapping mission, and you're like, "Oh gosh, that's bad." So yeah.
How tired do your thumbs get from the joystick?
Not very. It's a very light action. And honestly, too, this is very anticlimactic, and all of you will be like very like upset to hear this. But like, essentially, once I plan a mission, so we have mission planning software that we use for these things. So once I plan the mission and press go, I literally just stand there for half an hour watching the drone fly back. And so clients have asked like, "Can I watch you work?" And I'm like, "Sure." Yeah, check it out. And so then they're like, "That's all?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a lot behind it." But yeah, that's it. That's all.
How high off the ground does the air become public?
Yeah.
From the time you leave the ground. So basically it's defined as like Class E airspace. Class E stands for like everywhere, and then there's like A, B, C, D. Class A is usually around like big airports. Class B is around smaller airports. C, regional airports. D is like other facilities, and then there's like some other weird little designations that I forget because I haven't taken my test in a while. But yeah, it's public airspace, like
So you
pretty
just wanna
quickly.
follow someone mowing their lawn, you can do that.
You could. I would. Yeah, they'd probably smack you.
Don't people buy and sell air rights in certain
Okay.
places? That's the
Yeah, for construction.
For construction.
Yeah, so once you build a building,
Okay.
but that's like a different thing.
That makes sense.
FAA might get involved in that, but like, maybe I don't know. I've been buying air rights lately.
A different kind of air
A different kind of
Not
content. Yeah, exactly. So.
All right, we got time for one more.
Okay, sorry.
How many drones do you have, and do you have different utilizations of those drones?
Yes, I have, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something like that. I primarily use one, which has a couple sensors on it. It's a camera and then a multispectral sensor. so I can do like vegetation indices. But yeah, definitely a lot of drones are used for a lot of different things. What I think is neat about like, so if I step up in a platform, which is probably this year, you can attach different sensors. And so they all have different payloads, you can attach different sensors. So many of the same, like the same drone platform could accommodate a camera or a LiDAR sensor or like a multispectral or hyperspectral sensor. It's kind of cool because you can just customize. So yeah, and then there's some smaller drones that I have just for like flying around. And if you crash into something, you're like, no big deal. So yeah.
Thank you. Just cheers and down.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. I really appreciate it. I want to make everybody know that Dana is like a bird. He flies, but a fish, I swim. Dana's afraid to get his feet wet. That's why he likes to fly. So next we're going to hear from Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a teacher, a mentor, role model. Oh, wow. Fantastic biker. Hey. Bicyclist, I suppose you don't ride a Harley. But he's going to tell us, this is like an HBO special. Right? This is Confessions of a Teacher in the Northeast Kingdom. And I cannot wait to hear a respectable man's take on shameless actions that occur in our high school setting.
Careful, I mean, most of the audience I work with and teach, so we'll see what that's like. And it's like 101, like don't do that. Don't mix work with home. I am Jeremiah Melhuish. I'm a teacher at North Country Union High School. I've been there for the last 10 years. I'm in year 15. Do I need a microphone?
No, you're good.
I'm in year 15 as a teacher, which, thinking back, like, I never thought I'd be the wily veteran who's all cynical and has lost the spark. I'm just kidding. But I am in year 15. I have worked in a number of different places, and what's really cool is I got people in here from all these different places, which is super, super special. So I've been at Sheldon Elementary School. I had a really quick 3 months at the Howard Center, and then I got fired because I didn't follow their rules. I was at Enosburg Falls High School, where I actually graduated as well. And again, I've been at North Country for the last 10 years. One thing that is super unique about the Northeast Kingdom, I think, is captured in this picture right here.
Yeah.
You show up to school in the winter, and you got a line of sleds. How did they get there? They probably drove across the lake to get there.
Wow.
And again, like we get new teachers that come from out of state, and they're like, "What's it like to teach here?" And I don't know, kids drive their snowmobiles. It's weird. But I mean, it's also home. So like I said, 15 years. This is my first day of school ever. This is actually my first day as a student teacher at People's Academy. That's my college apartment.
Sweater.
I decided, no tie, but I thought the sweater vest was something. I see Anya's face. One thing I want to point out, you really can't tell, but notice how straight the hairline is. It's not like that anymore. This is this year. Right? Same smile, different coffee cup. My face is a little skinnier, but equally as excited. And I feel like what I want to kind of capture today is I'm kind of the answer to what's it like to work at a dream job. And maybe that's a little bit cheesy, but people kind of say, oh, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? And I'm like, I'm already doing it. I genuinely enjoy going to work every single day. People always say if you can find a job that doesn't feel like a job, you've kind of got it made. And for me, that's what I have. So I'm going to just kind of tell some stories, show some pictures. And it really starts with me in high school. I have a little bit of an identity crisis because depending on who I'm around, I could be like this. This is Jerry. This is Jerry, right? High school Mel was Jerry. And I got Ellen right here. And Ellen and Latin, no, this is that's me as a freshman. I used to have more hair. And then I got to college. Right? Started out like this. Yeah. Started out like this. College was weird. weird. College was weird. College was a transition. I think we can all empathize that in college we kind of try to find ourselves, or maybe try to find out who we are not.
Oh yeah!
So usually it takes a couple of days before I show these pictures. But you guys are like it. So college was weird. College was weird. I'm gonna just leave this up there as I tell the story. College. So 10th grade Mel. Okay, I'll leave this up there. 10th grade Mel. I'm in my humanities class with Mr. DeMar, who I thought was an asshole.
Yes!
Agreed.
Turns out maybe I was the asshole because I was an angsty 16-year-old, and I'm like, I should have got 100 on this test. There's no way that I didn't get 100 on this test. And I'd always been pretty good, specifically in history, and I was admittedly kind of grade grubbing because I felt like I can memorize dates, I can memorize people, I can memorize places, and I didn't get a question right. I will tell you what. So he's like, oh, well, how to prove it to me? Prove to me you're right. And that was kind of like it's such an arbitrary, like random moment, but that was my moment where I was like, wait, I'm gonna go show him that I'm right. I'm on the computer, I'm on my dial-up internet. Ma, don't pick up the phone because it's gonna log me out. And I get all this information on essentially why I was correct and Nate DeMar, I'm gonna drop his first name, was incorrect. And I come back in the next day and I slap it on his desk. I was like, there, that's why I'm right. He's like, well, how about you teach the class? All right, I will. So I get up there and I essentially say, here's why Mr. DeMar is wrong, here's why I'm right. And I sit back down. He gave me the point, by the way. I sit back down, I was like, oh, shit, that was pretty fun. And like, that was my moment. I was like, everything I do from that moment on is going to be towards being a teacher. And again, we had a weird little stint here. Maybe I kind of forgot about teaching for a hot second, but I eventually get there.
You forgot about everything. You don't remember anything from that year.
I don't remember anything from that year. I don't. It's
That was
true.
1 year. You're licensed like that after 1 year. That's pretty impressive.
Damn right it was. So, I become a teacher. I walk in day one of my student teaching, bright-eyed, bushy-tail, and I have this old, 35 plus years, mentor teacher, and he's like, you want to be a teacher? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you realize what you're about to do? I'm like, maybe. He says, well, you got to remember two things. I was like, all right, get her notebook out. It's like, they're all assholes and slackers. I'm like, wait, what? Get in there, like, there's no way this is true. And he was wrong. He was just cynical. But as I got into the teaching profession, I realized there are a ton of obstacles, right? There are a ton of obstacles. And I don't want to dwell on the obstacles, but I do think it's important to recognize that we as teachers, we have a lot that we're dealing with. Whether it's just all the questions around funding right now. Where's the money coming from? There's all this tension with politics. The number of times I've been on a chairlift this year and I'm talking to some random stranger and I'm like, hey, I'm a teacher, I'm a history teacher, and they say, oh, do you teach real history? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And I always throw it back, like, what's that mean to you? And they never have an answer, right? But there's all this tension. And there's the question about teacher compensation. There's the question about the amount of time that we as teachers are dedicating not only to our contracted hour between 7:30 and 3:45, but the amount of time that we're putting in after. I was a basketball coach for 15 years, and I can tell you that if I got home by 9:30 on any random Tuesday night, I was doing well. And if I wasn't putting in an additional 3 or 4 hours of work after that, I was doing pretty well. And so the demands that we as teachers have in terms of our time, in terms of preparation for students to make sure that we show up every single day and don't stand up there and look like we don't know what we're talking about, we don't anticipate what barriers students may encounter, it's profound, And so there are obstacles that go into the world of teaching, and it takes a certain kind of person to be able to put that all aside and say, yeah, but I want to do this because. And for me, it's been an easy ask. And so that's all I'll talk about with obstacles, because I'm more interested in talking about all the cool things that I get to do every single day with students. I'm moving this isn't my way.
Get it out of there.
So in my career, I haven't always been in a classroom. I've worked literally every single possible job that you could work in a school, minus being food services and administration. I used to want to be a principal, and then I worked as a special educator, and I said, I'm okay. I'm okay. So I started as a paraeducator. I started as a behavior interventionist. I worked as an after-school program coordinator. I've been a coach. I've worked as a special educator. I've worked as a classroom teacher. And throughout all of this, I've seen it all. I've seen it all. There's literally no situation that you could throw at me that I'd be like, yeah, I have no idea how I would deal with that. So you name something, I probably saw it.
The athletic director.
I've been an athletic director. For $1,000.
Yep.
My first salary, this is 2011, guys, $9.37 an hour with a $1,000 stipend for healthcare. This is in Vermont. This is in Vermont, right? $9.37 an hour in 2011. It's insanity. But again, despite that, I've done some awesome things. Right? I've worked in opportunities where I get to bring students out into the field and get these experiences in just life. I've worked with students with profound disabilities. I've worked with students who have just these amazing life stories, but for whatever reason just haven't had the same opportunities that other people have had. I've worked in semi-secluded, self-secluded alternative programs where I got kids coming in with parents who overdosed the night before. I got kids who have overdosed at school, and the safest place for them is to stay at school. Right? I've worked in situations where I've seen everything, and I've been able to see just ridiculous amounts of growth. I've been able to take kids out into the community to create these life skills, to create relationships. I've been able to do some amazing community outreach projects. This is one right here at North Country. If you guys go to North Country Union High School, right across the road, working over the course of 5 years, we built a Henry David Thoreau replica cabin, made it into this outdoor classroom, and it's open for anybody. It's right over at Prouty. It's pretty amazing. And being able to see kids quite literally plan and build this is super, super awesome. We've done other community outreach where we built the original Coves Trail at Scotts Cove. It's been rerouted a little bit as they've expanded, but getting students out into the community to do community outreach and give them a sense of ownership is something that I'm super, super proud of. And again, this is not learning inside the classroom, right? This is place-based learning, and it's something that here in the Northeast Kingdom we have unique opportunities to do every single day. And I will give all the credit to the teachers in North Country for getting our students outside, doing something for our community. I've even brought kids out to a field in Charleston and we dug a trench. If you ever want to see something cool, you get 15 kids with shovels digging a trench in the middle of a field in Charleston. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But again, like, what a cool experience for me, but not only for them, but for me as a teacher, to be able to bring students out to do something like this. Like, I could talk about World War I, I could show pictures, I could show video clips, but to bring students out to actually do something like dig a trench and then troubleshoot when it rains the next day. And how do we empty a trench of rain? What happens after you dig a foot down and you hit groundwater? Nice troubleshooting opportunities. Can't remember this.
Elaborate.
Gamer Club.
Oh yeah. I try to forget.
So as a teacher, I would say one of the obstacles that we have, but also one of the benefits we have, is it's really emphasized that we do that we essentially help students and we facilitate with student clubs. And so, Cameron Marcoux, everybody in the back there is. No one wants to have like him. We got together, a student comes to us like, we want to do Dungeons and Dragon Club. Yeah. All right, we'll do Dungeons and Dragon Club. And then all these kids show up, and truthfully, it was the Island of Misfit Toys. It was a little uncomfortable for the amount of like hard snuggling that was going on. But it's an opportunity for us as teachers to help, right?
Cuddle puddle.
There was a lot of cuddle puddles. A lot of cuddle puddles. But it was just a chance for students to come together and being able to give students agency and student voice over something is really, really powerful. So again, this is all learning outside of the classroom, right? I'm not even sitting down, I'm not up at my board, I'm not doing my lessons on imperialism, all my AP students were here, that's what we did this morning. So what's it like in the classroom? And I'm relatively traditional in the sense that I'll stand up and I'll tell a story and I'll talk and I'm like, okay, here's a date, you gotta remember, but please write it down because I won't let you use your notes. But there's a lot of other ways that we as teachers can support students and we can reach students and we can create learning opportunities. And I love when students can get in front of a class and take the lead through simulations, through experiential learning, through just teaching the class. And I've had some really cool opportunities to, as a teacher, sit back and just watch students flourish. I kind of provide guidelines and then I let them do and let them take it wherever it goes. And there's been some really amazing just scenes of student engagement. And I feel like this is where the learning is most authentic. Again, I can get up there and I can talk, but this to me has always felt just the most authentic. There you go, Josie.
Oh yeah.
Right? We have tea parties sometimes, right? Sometimes we have tea parties. Something that I also, it's a rule in my classroom that if you're going to read, you have to stand up. And students are always like, what do you mean we have to stand up? Well, you got three options. One, you can stand on the floor. Two, you can stand on a desk. Or three, you can stand on a table. And it's the same for me. So if I'm reading something, I'm always standing on a table because I know all the eyes go right up here. Just like you guys are doing right now. It's very, very comfortable. So again, it's just opportunities for me as a teacher to engage with students. Something that I'm super lucky at North Country specifically is the amount of relationships that I've built and the number of experiences I can take students on and I can participate with students with, whether it's something as stupid as dressing up, right? Gotta love Halloween.
Where's the dress?
I didn't include the picture of the dress.
We have pictures of the dress.
I should have invited them. Is there a picture of me in a dress? Yes, there is, but I don't have it here. Right? But just these moments right here where I'm with students, I'm laughing, I'm having a great time, and then you get these moments. This is Coleman Southwick. I got no problem using his name.
No.
Coleman Southwick's in 8th grade in this picture. I actually started my career working with him as a one-on-one. Pretty interesting student to say the least. Fast forward, and here he is graduating. And what's really cool about this picture is I worked with him as a one-on-one to start my career. I ended up being his case manager when he graduated high school, and then 4 years later, I was his best man in his wedding. Right? Those are cool moments. Those are cool moments. And those moments don't happen unless something as simple as this happens. As a teacher, we have all this pressure of making sure that we're hitting whatever benchmarks. We got state testing next week. No, this week. Day after tomorrow. Right? Stupid state testing. We have to do it, whatever, right? We're making sure that we're hitting our standards. But the reality is, it's about relationships. It's about relationships. It's super corny, super cheesy, but it really is the reality of it. I know for a fact that not everybody's stoked on history. I get it, and I'm cool with that. But if my goal every day is to make sure for the next 75 minutes, 70 minutes, whatever it is, that group of 25 kids, that group of 8 kids, that group of 15 kids walks out and knows that they mattered. Because they do. Because they do. And that's really what I'm after. And I think that Coleman's a great example of that. I got a birthday wish from him the other day, so it's always special that him and I are still in contact. He's got 2 kids, he's killing it. I get to see students in leadership positions. This is at the School Redesign and Action Conference in Rhode Island 2 years ago. It's a national conference around creating positive school culture. And this particular group of students from my Genocide and Holocaust class went and did a presentation on the work that they'd been doing in class, in the community, And it was a group of probably 75 or 80 students, administrators, and teachers. And again, just being able to sit back and watch these students, 16, 17 years old, absolutely kill it was one of the most proud moments of my career. And again, it's through those relationships and that trust that these guys are willing to do this and really create some really positive conversations. And then you get pictures like this. This poor kid, first time ever being on a plane. Hey, you remember this trip?
Yeah, we're good there.
So I get the opportunity to travel internationally with students every 2 years through our German exchange program. Yeah, Germany! And being able to bring students abroad and see pictures like this where this poor kid gets off the plane, he's like, I don't know what just happened. It's like, yeah, man, that's international travel. You're lucky they gave you food. He ended up getting a concussion this trip, so it's so interesting. But then you get amazing pictures like this where you see the reaction of students seeing the Alps for the first time. And it's some of the coolest moments of my career. Again, first time kids having sushi, being able to travel abroad is obviously special on a personal level, but it's even more special to see it through the eyes of students who may have not had the opportunities to make this trip. North Country does an amazing job of helping to sponsor students and give students financial assistance to have these experiences. And we send so many students to Europe, to New York City, to Montreal. It's pretty amazing what we do at the high school. I've even had the chance to teach internationally on one of these trips. I was able to teach a 6th grade PE class. And that was really cool, especially since this kid right here, 4 years later, ended up coming to North Country on an exchange, walks up to me and he's like, you don't remember me, but you're the reason I play American football in my town. You gotta be kidding me, right? So all of these I would not be able to do unless I was a teacher, right? And teaching is obviously a really difficult profession to be in. For some, there's so many different barriers, and it's that way with every single profession, but the amount of opportunities I have far outweighs any of those barriers. I get to have moments like this where all of a sudden you have a kid who gets a full ride to Columbia because of all of his merits. And that's just a cool picture. Honestly, I just had to put this in because it just looks badass. That's literally the only reason. I was a finalist 4 years ago for the Vermont Teacher of the Year award. I ended up coming in second to some PE teacher from Virgins.
You're way better.
Freaking Commodores. This is how I showed up to my interview. You guys can't tell, but that's blue eyeshadow, that's blue hair. The amount of glitter that I got on in that picture is absolutely ridiculous. And the first question they said was, so how do you engage with students? Got blue nail polish on. I was like, well, let me tell you about this play that I'm in right now. And I got to be in Greece. And this was a full circle moment for me because my senior year of high school, I was also in Greece. And
That first picture.
Go back real quick, right?
Because I gotta do it. Right, my senior year of high school, I was in Greece again. And I had a teacher, my English teacher, Bob Chet, Mr. C, was just one of the most amazing teachers that I had. He was so relationship driven. So much of what I do is based off the way he conducted himself in class. And he got to be the teen angel, the beauty school dropout guy. And even as an 18-year-old, I'm like, if I ever get to be in Greece as a teacher, that would just be really great.
Really great.
And then, whoops. And there I am in Greece as beauty school dropout. And it's one of the most special moments of my career. 100%. So here's kind of my overall, right? I really want to have you guys ask questions because I'm more interested in that than anything else. It's because of these guys that I'm a teacher. right? It's because of these guys right here that show up and are here supporting me, standing up here in front of you guys. Like, it's 100% the students. Do I have amazing colleagues? 100%. Right? I have some of the most amazing colleagues that you could ever imagine that have the same vision that I have, but the students are the reason why teachers do what they do. It's 100% the reason that we do what we do, because of the people that we're surrounded with, and all of these students right here make it worth it. Any questions? Yeah.
Okay, so you worked in all these positions in the schools, but you landed on history teacher.
Mhm.
And so my question is like, why history teacher? And then my second question, or my addendum to that question is, because you're a history teacher and you've taught history for 15 years, what is your like top history moment?
Ooh.
Or like top history moment for now,
Too far.
or something.
And is it real history?
It is. My response to that, so the real history question is always by like racism, because yes, I teach about racism. They're like, oh yeah, of course you teach about that. Sorry, that's my Northeast Kingdom accent. So why history? I think history is the story of people.
Yeah.
History is the story of people. One, I'm a story. I love telling stories first and foremost, and history is the story of people. And there's some great freaking episodes in history. Like if they were to just make it into a soap opera. Like, oh my gosh, the stuff that we talk about in class, it's just so freaking juicy. It's so juicy. But if you ever want to know like why, right? History is always the question of why. And so for me, that's why I really enjoy history. And even as a little kid, I was like, my goodness, this is just freaking great. I couldn't read, but boy, I loved history. So I didn't learn to read till 6th grade, guys. And No Child Left Behind.
You could have started with that.
I should have started with that. Go figure. And what was the other part of your question, sorry?
Like what's your top moment in history for either now or ever, or like top 3? That's a hard question. So
It's a hard question.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Top for now, for this moment in history. What's
By
your
decade.
top like?
Okay, it's too big, but I'll give you a story about Tycho Brahe.
Okay.
Because Josie just said Tycho Brahe. So Tycho Brahe is this amazing astronomer, mathematician, and he ended up losing his nose in this duel with this other guy because he was a little bit of a drunk, and so he had his nose chopped off, and he had all of these like other noses that he would like super glue to his face. But as like the days would go on, his nose would droop and like fall off. He'd have to like reattach it, and he also like he wasn't very social with people probably because he was a genius, but he did have a pet elk. And he would just like chill with his pet elk, and him and his pet elk would just get drunk together.
Oh my god.
Until one day his pet elk like fell down the stairs.
No.
Yeah.
In his house?
In his house. This isn't even the worst part.
No.
It's not even the worst part.
What's the worst part?
So
He ate it.
I don't know. Tycho Brahe. So Tycho Brahe had a special friend named Jeffrey.
Okay.
And Jeffrey's sole purpose was for entertainment, and Jeffrey was a dwarf.
Okay.
And Jeffrey's sole job was to like live under the table and like dance for Tycho Brahe.
Okay.
So you got this
Not
Tycho
great.
Brahe guy who's got a nose missing, he's got a drunk
Wow,
elk,
this
and
guy was
then,
complicated.
like he's super nuanced. We talk about nuance. Tycho Brahe is nuanced.
Not politically correct.
Not politically correct at all. Yeah, Tycho Brahe. Any other questions?
What era?
Yeah.
So we're talking. So this is like scientific revolution, so like 1600s.
What
Yeah.
did he do?
Yeah. What was he known for?
Well, but what did he discover?
So Tycho Brahe essentially built on Johannes Kepler's, Johannes Kepler's view of like planetary motion. He was
Okay.
part of the, Copernican theory and just sciencey stuff. I don't know. I don't get how it works. I just teach it.
Yeah. Cool.
Other questions?
Isn't science really the story of why, though?
Science is the story of why, and if we can understand the history of the why, then we got the history. I don't know. I was never good in science because I always just wanted to like learn where it came from. Patrick.
You seem to be limitlessly optimistic. How do you
Absolutely.
maintain such a disposition?
No, for real, like not tongue in cheek at all. It's these guys right here. If you guys have the chance to just sit down and have a conversation with young people in this community, you would be blown away with the compassion, the empathy, the vision of the future. It will blow your mind. People always are like, I'm so worried about what's going to happen. I'm not at all. I'm not at all. Because these guys got it figured out. We should do a better job of listening to people who are 16, 17 years old if we wanted to figure out a way to actually make things better.
Hear, hear.
And I'm around them all the time, so I have no choice but to be optimistic.
Yeah, okay, so then my next question is like, as a teacher for 15 years, then what is your perspective of like, what would be the best thing to do to fix it? Like what it, or what?
When you say it, what's it?
The education system in our country.
Recognize teachers,
Yep.
more funding,
Yep.
right? And a lot of people are like, property, I get it, taxes, man, it's tough. I pay them too. But I'm telling you, the amount of what we are asked to, and again, I don't want to sound like an old cynical veteran or anything, but from what I was asked to do 15 years ago compared to what I'm asked to do today, I'm asked to do so much more than I've ever been asked to do. And the scary thing is the amount of resources is becoming less and less. And there's this growing tension between public schools and the perception of what we do versus the reality of what we do. And it's really difficult to navigate those conversations because you want to give everybody a voice, you want everybody to feel like they're heard, but boy, there's just some stuff that's out there that's just absolute trash.
I have two 14-year-olds and a 9-year-old. They're gonna go to Lake Region, sorry.
I won't tell you how I feel about
I
Lake
live
Region.
but I went to North Country a million years
Hell
ago.
yeah.
And back in the day, we incorporated civics into what was then called humanities. You know, I personally think, and I talk to my kids a lot about things that we would class under civics. How much of that is still happening in high schools? Are you incorporating that into history?
100%. Every day. Every day.
I think that's part of the key of informing kids and a hopeful future.
Yeah, you know, I just kind of anecdotally, so in North Country, we have government and economics for 10th graders required. Every 10th grader has government and economics. You could debate whether 10th grade is the right year to teach it or whether it should be a little bit later in their high school career. That's a different conversation, but every 10th grader goes through some level of government and economics. And our GovEc teachers are absolutely phenomenal. I cannot stress enough how amazing our teachers are in taking the emotion out of, let's be honest, American government is freaking boring. If you look at the processes, it's freaking boring. And it's all these extra emotions that get locked, they get put into it. And after this year's election, whether, you know, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, I don't think there's any argument that the world is pretty freaking charged. And students walked in the day after, and it, you know, from my perspective, right, there was a little bit of stuff, but nothing crazy in terms of one group versus this other group and we're the winners, you're the losers, because I think that our GovEc teachers took the emotion out of it. And I teach a class on genocide and Holocaust, and the number of times that I'm calling an audible and going in a different direction because of something that pops up, students want to know. The students today are more informed than any group of people that we have ever had.
Wow.
And my job is to help them navigate the amount of information that's coming at them.
So how are you, maybe and your peers, best using your platform to use the voice of the students to come through to the boards, to the officials in the county, to the state?
Yeah, we have student representatives on our board. Every board meeting they're there, and so we will have teacher representatives, the state of the teachers, and then we have student representatives, the state of the students, and we give voice to them through that. The number of students that are on different advisory committees at Montpelier is pretty staggering. No North Country students specifically, but there's a ton of different opportunities at the State House throughout the year for students to go in and give testimony. And our representatives, our senators in our state are always looking for that feedback, and it's not a token feedback. It's legit. It's legit.
You kind of talk in general terms about resources being less than they were. What's the biggest story that's not being told? Whether it's, like, oh, they're cutting the arts funding, or they're not enough paras, or whatever. What's the biggest?
The hard thing is I think people are talking about it, but not nearly enough, and it's around mental health. I think that we would all be kidding ourselves if we didn't say that we're all dealing with our own shit, right? And probably more than we have maybe ever in our lives. And our students are trying to not only navigate the angst of being a 16-year-old in a perfect world to all of a sudden being a 16-year-old in a world that's so polarized. And that leads to a lot of anxiety. And a lot of what I'm trying to help support students is well beyond academics. Academics takes a backseat, if I'm being 100% honest with you guys. It's, are you safe? Are you fed? Are you okay? Let's deal with that first. And I'll be honest, I don't know what the answer is. Like, North Country has amazing resources in terms of mental health supports, but there's systematic changes that have to be made, and unfortunately I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think mental health is the biggest barrier in the educational field.
Do you think that this increased ask or in your personal experience, has the increased ask on teachers escalated since the pandemic?
Yeah, we're still coming out of that.
Yeah.
We're 100% still coming out of it. Really interesting phenomenon this year with our freshmen. This is one of the more academically savvy freshman groups that I've had in the last 4 years compared to some of the other academic levels coming in, and that's largely due to the pandemic and loss of learning. But this is also probably my most needy group socially.
Okay.
It's this weird in between. I think we're probably still 5-6 years away from really seeing a course correction. Yep. Yeah, which is kind of crazy. I mean, you think about those second, third graders, 2020, and all that important socializing that doesn't happen for a year and a half, 2 years. And even when they come back, it's only half time, and there's masks and whatnot. It's going to take some time before we see our way through that, but we're on our way. We're on our way for sure. It's not doom and gloom though. Let me tell you, it's not doom and gloom. It's not doom and gloom. Again, we can talk about obstacles like crazy, and those are important to acknowledge, but it's not doom and gloom. There's a lot of good stuff happening. Joe?
Yeah, so pivoting, you mentioned that there's not a scenario that you haven't seen and that you wouldn't feel comfortable in. But to the uninitiated here, can you share a story or two about?
I'll stand up. All right, let me tell you about a story when I went to Germany with me. So, getting towards the end of this trip to Germany. I didn't say the name. Getting towards the end of this trip to Germany, and first, little context, everybody had been getting sick. The stomach bump, going right through everybody. And this one girl, she was starting to get sick. Okay, well, it'll be fine. And this poor girl was so sick, to the point where we could not bring her on the plane home. Right? So Lena and I, the German teacher, we look at each other and we kind of have this okay, I'm going to stay behind with her. She's going to bring the rest of the students and we'll figure it out. Well, as it turns out, her appendix ruptured 5 days before. So we get her home, and I was like, yo, you, like a day later, I have forever the largest charge on North Country's credit card. At $10,000 between the hotel and the next day airfare, I'm pretty proud of that. Pretty proud of that. Thank you, superintendent, for getting me home. But, like, she's on the plane, like, oh, this girl is not good. Her mom picks us up in Montreal and was like, you gotta bring her to the hospital because this girl is not good. Ruptured appendix. We're like, did you know? She's like, yep, I knew. I just didn't want to bother anybody. If she had gone to the German hospital, it would have been free. When you're in Europe and you're sick, just go to the hospital. It's cheap. It's so cheap. So that's a great example. That's a great example. Oh my God. Any other questions? Katie, question? I don't want to tell the poison story.
One of my personal favorites ever is we were loading the after school program kids onto the bus, and Jeremiah Idle Hand Syndrome Melhuish is standing at the bus holding a balloon, and every kid walks onto the bus and sits down and the door of the bus shuts, and he blows up the balloon and lets the balloon go, and it shoots directly into the engine of the bus. I turned to him and I'm like, if you messed up this bus, and these children are not leaving us now in the pure dark at 5 p.m.
After school program kids are different.
And I don't know what happened to that balloon, but thank God.
The kids got home, I got home, it was fine. It was fine. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, hopes, dreams? Abby!
I'd really like to hear the story about the cow. Again, that's a good one.
That's I wasn't even a teacher with that one.
I know.
Did you guys know the cows go upstairs but not downstairs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me tell you what it looks like in a college dorm. It's messy. Messy. So I'm RA, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. No kids coming back. We open the door and there's these 3 kids pushing a cow up the stairs of the dorm room, like the dorm room hallway, and we're like, what the hell's going on? We're so sorry, we won it at the fair. Right over here. They won it at this freaking, they put the raffle in, they won it at the fair, like, we don't know what to do with it. Shit on the floor. So we're like, all right. You gotta have it out of here before the morning or we're gonna have problems. I don't know what they did with the cow, but the cow was gone by the morning. But I can tell you that cows do not go downstairs. They do not go downstairs. I mean, they do, but they shouldn't.
Not willingly.
Not willingly. That's all I got, unless anybody has any more questions. Appreciate you all being here.
Say thank you.
All right, everybody. You've now experienced your 3rd year of Tipsy Talks. If you think that you have a story to tell, come find us. We'll put you up here and have 50 eyes staring back at you. It's a great feeling. Thank you for coming out. Thank you, Parker Pie, for hosting. Don't forget, tip the bartender. Drive home safe. And we'll see you next year.
Thanks, Patty!